The underestimation. The crimson sun of Kepler 442b cast long shadows across the canyon walls as Commander Zekthar of the Vraxian Dominion studied the human settlement through his tactical overlay. The holographic display painted the colony in harsh blue light, marking defensive positions, power signatures, and thermal readings with clinical precision. Everything the sensor suite detected was catalogued, analyzed, and deemed insufficient. Primitives, Zekthar muttered, his mandibles clicking in what his species considered amusement. They still use kinetic weapons, actual metal projectiles propelled by chemical reactions. His second-in-command, Velcra, shifted her chitinous plating in what might have been agreement. The intelligence reports confirm it, Commander. Humanity has developed energy weapons, rail systems, and plasma technology. Yet their military doctrine still emphasizes these bullets. It's almost sad, Zekthar continued, zooming the display to focus on the human defensive positions. We have particle shields that can deflect asteroids, armor that regenerates under fire, and they're pointing metal tubes at us. This won't be a battle, it'll be an extermination. What Commander Zekthar couldn't know from his position 3 kilometers away, was that one of those metal tubes was currently pointed directly at his head. Sergeant Maya Chen lay perfectly still on a rocky outcropping, her breathing synchronized with the wind patterns she'd been tracking for the past 2 hours. Her rifle, an ancient design by galactic standards barely modified from weapons used 5 centuries prior, rested against her shoulder like an extension of her own body. Through her scope, she watched the Vraxian commander gesticulate to his subordinates, completely unaware that his life hung by a thread. Range, 3,200 meters, she whispered into her comm. Wind, variable 6 to 8 knots northwest. Temperature gradient creating updraft in Sector 3. Humidity at 42%. Jesus, Maya, came the voice of her spotter, Corporal James Webb. That's an impossible shot, even for you. Everything's impossible until someone does it, she replied, her finger resting gently beside the trigger guard. But not yet. Let them get comfortable first. Let them think they're safe. Below, the Vraxian assault force began their advance. 200 soldiers, each equipped with personal shielding, adaptive camouflage, and weapons that could atomize a human in microseconds. They moved with the confidence of a species that had conquered 47 worlds, each victory easier than the last. The first squad reached the canyon floor, their shields shimmering in the alien sunlight. The squad leader, a veteran of a dozen campaigns, raised his weapon toward the human fortifications. "For the Dominion," he bellowed in his native tongue, which the translation implants rendered as mechanical clicks and whistles. The response came not from the fortifications, but from a ridge 2,000 meters away. The shot was almost beautiful in its precision. Maya's bullet carved through the air, riding the wind currents she'd mapped in her mind. It entered the tiny gap between the Vraxian's helmet and chest plate, a space measuring just 3 centimeters, visible for only a fraction of a second as he raised his weapon. The squad leader dropped without a sound. "Contact!" someone screamed in the Vraxian ranks. "Sniper bearing..." The second shot hit before the warning could be completed. Another helmet, another impossible angle. Another Vraxian learning that human primitiveness came with a terrible price. Impossible. Velcra's voice crackled over Zekthar's comm. "Commander, the shields, they're not even engaging. The projectiles are finding gaps we didn't know existed." Zekthar watched in growing disbelief as his forces scattered. 7 soldiers down in as many seconds, each shot finding the microscopic vulnerabilities in their armor systems. His tactical computer helpfully calculated the probability of such accuracy. 0.0003%. "It's one shooter," his weapons analyst reported, voice trembling. "Ballistic signature indicates a single rifle. Primitive propellant-based system. No lock-on capability, no AI targeting assist, no computational support whatsoever." Then how? Another shot. Another soldier dropping mid-stride. 8 down, fall back to hardened positions. Zekthar commanded. "Active countermeasures. Scramble their targeting systems." "Sir," the analyst said quietly, "they don't have targeting systems to scramble. That human is doing this manually." The word hung in the air like an accusation, manually. Without computer assistance, without AI prediction algorithms, without any of the technological crutches that every civilized species had relied upon for millennia. Just organic calculation, muscle memory, and something the Vraxians had forgotten existed. Pure skill. Maya shifted her position, moving with practiced efficiency to a new vantage point. She'd learned long ago that staying in one place was suicide, even if your enemy couldn't pinpoint you. Webb marked targets. I'm seeing officers at positions Delta 4 through Delta 7. Confirmed, Webb replied, his own scope scanning the enemy formation. 4 high-value targets. They're trying to coordinate a response. Not for long. The next 4 shots came in rapid succession, each one a masterpiece of calculated violence. Maya didn't just account for wind, distance, and gravity. She factored in the Coriolis effect of the planet's rotation, the temperature differential between her position and the target, even the slight variations in her own heartbeat. Her mind didn't calculate these variables in the mathematical sense. It absorbed them, internalized them, made them part of an instinctive understanding that no computer could replicate. In the Vraxian command center, panic was setting in. 12 officers down, 17 soldiers killed, and they still couldn't locate the shooter with any precision. Their sensors detected the muzzle flash, the sonic signature, but by the time the data was processed, the human had moved. This violates every principle of modern warfare, Velcro insisted, reviewing the tactical data. No organic being should be capable of this level of precision. The mathematics alone require computational power beyond biological capacity. Zekthar's mandibles ground together in frustration. Then explain it to me. How is one human with a primitive weapon decimating a force that conquered the Kalahari Nebula? An intelligence officer tentatively raised one appendage. Sir, we've been researching human military history. Their species has been using these weapons for over 1,000 years. They have what they call marksmen, individuals who dedicate their entire lives to mastering this single skill. Ridiculous. No rational species would waste resources on such specialization when technology can achieve the same result. With respect, Commander, the officer continued, pulling up historical human data. Technology can't achieve the same result, not in the way humans do it. Their best snipers, they call themselves that, have recorded kills at distances exceeding our maximum effective range. And they do it by understanding variables our computers don't even recognize as relevant. The display showed images of human snipers throughout history. Carlos Hathcock with 93 confirmed kills in Vietnam, Lyudmila Pavlichenko with 309 in World War II, Chris Kyle, Simo Heha, and dozens of others whose names were written in the blood of their enemies. Each one a testament to humanity's strangest gift, the ability to take an imperfect tool and wield it with supernatural precision through nothing but practice, patience, and an almost spiritual connection to their craft. They're not using technology, the intelligence officer concluded. They're using something older. Something we've forgotten? Maya allowed herself a small smile as she chambered another round. 23 shots, 23 kills. The Vraxians were learning the hard way what every human warrior knew instinctively. Sometimes the oldest ways were the best ways. Her calm crackled. Maya, they're requesting a parley. Command wants to know if you'll accept terms. They want to talk about human weapon systems. Specifically, they want to understand how you're doing what you're doing. And, Webb paused. They're offering to send their best marksman. One-on-one, their champion against ours. Maya considered this, watching through her scope as the Vraxian forces huddled behind their shields, suddenly very aware of their mortality. She thought about the countless hours on the range, the Marine Corps training, the additional years she'd spent learning from the best shooters Earth had to offer. She thought about the philosophy her first instructor had drilled into her head. A sniper isn't a person with a gun. A sniper is a weapon that happens to look like a person. Tell them I accept, she said finally, but on one condition. What's that? They have to promise not to cry when they lose. Webb laughed despite the tension. I'll phrase it more diplomatically. As the sun set over Kepler 442b, casting the battlefield in shades of purple and gold, both sides prepared for a confrontation that would define the rest of the war. The Vraxians saw it as a chance to restore their pride, to prove that technology and civilization would triumph over barbarism. Maya saw it as something simpler, a chance to teach the galaxy a lesson it desperately needed to learn. Humanity didn't survive by being the strongest or the fastest or the most advanced. Humanity survived by taking whatever tools they had, no matter how primitive, and mastering them so completely that the tools became extensions of their will. By the time other species realized what was happening, the lesson was usually written in the bodies of those who'd underestimated Earth's children. In his command center, Zekthar watched the human sniper's last known position through his tactical display. Somewhere out in that darkness, a single human with a metal tube and chemical propellant had humiliated his entire assault force. It was impossible. It was irrational. It was terrifying, and tomorrow he would watch his champion face her in single combat. And maybe, just maybe, they would finally understand what made humanity so dangerous. As Maya cleaned her rifle in preparation for the next day's challenge, she whispered the old sniper's prayer her instructor had taught her. Lord, let me be swift and true. Let my aim be steady and my purpose clear. And when the time comes, let me make the shot that matters. Tomorrow would reveal whether the Vraxians' champion could match a lifetime of dedication distilled into a single moment of perfect violence. Maya had a feeling they were about to learn why humans never bothered with fancy technology for some jobs. Some things, after all, required a human touch. The duel of philosophies. The neutral ground chosen for the duel sat in a valley between the human colony and the Vraxian encampment. A stretch of barren rock, dotted with crystalline formations that caught the morning light like frozen fire. Representatives from both sides gathered at a respectful distance, their weapons lowered but ready. This wasn't just a competition. It was a statement about the nature of warfare itself. Karvesh, the Vraxian champion, arrived with an entourage befitting his status. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, his exoskeleton polished to a mirror sheen, decorated with battle honors from 17 campaigns. His weapon was a masterpiece of engineering, a railgun integrated with quantum computing, predictive AI, atmospheric modeling systems, and targeting computers that could calculate 10,000 variables per microsecond. The weapon was worth more than most human cities. Maya arrived alone carrying her grandfather's rifle. This is their champion. Karvesh's translator rendered his clicking laughter in flat, emotionless tones. She looks like a child playing soldier. Where is her support team? Her technical staff? Her computational array? Don't need one, Maya replied, setting down a small case that contained nothing but ammunition and cleaning supplies. Just me and this. She patted her rifle affectionately. Been in my family for 6 generations. Killed its first enemy at the Battle of New Sarajevo. Still works just fine. Karvesh's mandibles twisted in what might have been confusion or contempt. You face me with an antique. I have killed from distances exceeding 5,000 meters. My weapon compensates for planetary rotation, atmospheric distortion, quantum uncertainty, and temporal displacement. It can predict target movement 3 seconds into the future. And you bring that? Yep. Maya began her pre-shot routine, checking her rifle with practiced efficiency. See, that's the difference between us, Bug. You trust your machine, I trust myself. The challenge parameters were simple. 3 targets at increasing distances, 1,000 meters, 2,000 meters, and 3,500 meters. Each shooter would take 1 shot per target. Highest accuracy wins. In case of a tie, they'd move to longer ranges until someone missed. Zekthar watched from the Vraxian observation post, his earlier confidence shaken but not destroyed. Karvesh has never missed a shot in competition, he told Velkra. His system is perfect. Whatever trick this human used yesterday, it won't work in a controlled environment. And if she wins, Commander, she won't. The first target was positioned at 1,000 meters, a standard humanoid silhouette with scoring zones marked in luminescent paint. By galactic standards, it was an easy shot. By any standards, it was routine for both competitors. Karvesh went first. He settled into position, his weapon's numerous sensors extending like mechanical flowers. Holographic displays flickered around him, showing wind speed, barometric pressure, humidity, gravitational variations, and dozens of other measurements. His AI calculated the optimal firing solution in 0.03 seconds, adjusting for every possible variable. The shot was perfect. The projectile, a magnetically accelerated tungsten dart, struck the target's center mass with mathematical precision. The scoring system registered a perfect 10. Acceptable, Karvesh announced, standing. Your turn, human. Try not to embarrass yourself. Maya walked to the firing line, dropped to one knee, and brought her rifle up in a single fluid motion. She didn't check any instruments. didn't consult any displays. She simply closed her eyes, took 3 slow breaths, and felt the world around her. The wind spoke to her through the grass movement. The temperature told its story through the way heat shimmered off distant rocks. The planet's rotation was a subtle pull she'd learned to feel in her inner ear. She didn't calculate these things, she knew them the way a fish knows water. Eyes open. Target acquired. Breath released halfway. Heartbeat steady. The rifle was an extension of her body. Her intent made physical. The trigger pull was smooth, inevitable. Her bullet struck within millimeters of Karvesh's impact point. Another perfect 10. Adequate. Karvesh conceded, though his translator couldn't quite hide the uncertainty in his voice. The second target will prove more challenging. At 2,000 meters, variables multiplied exponentially. Wind patterns became chaotic. Gravity's pull had more time to work. The Coriolis effect became impossible to ignore. This was where technology showed its value. Or so the Vraxians believed. Karvesh's AI spent a full second calculating the solution this time, running probability matrices and cross-referencing atmospheric models. When he fired, the dart flew true again, scoring another perfect hit. You see? He called to Maya. At this distance, organic calculation fails. You need processing power beyond flesh and blood. Maya didn't respond. She was already in her zone, that mental space where conscious thought fell away and pure instinct took over. Her instructors had called it the flow, that state where muscle memory, training, and intuition merged into something transcendent. She made minute adjustments to her position, compensating for factors Karvesh's computer didn't even measure. The way her own body heat affected the air around her barrel, the microscopic variations in her ammunition caused by humidity, the subtle gravitational influence of Kepler 442b's twin moons, currently in conjunction overhead. She didn't calculate these things. She felt them. The shot surprised even her. The bullet seemed to curve impossibly through the air, bending around obstacles that shouldn't have mattered, riding currents that the instruments didn't register. It struck the target dead center. Perfect 10. Webb was watching through his spotting scope from the human observation post. Holy hell, he breathed. That shot violated physics. The wind should have pushed it left by at least 15 centimeters. She didn't shoot where the target was, one of the other snipers explained. She shot where the wind would take the bullet. That's not calculation, that's art. Karvesh was recalibrating his sensors, convinced there must be an error. His AI insisted the human's shot was impossible given the measured conditions. Luck, he finally declared. Pure chance. The final target will expose your limitations. 3,500 meters. At this range, the targets looked like specks. At this range, the bullet would be in flight for over 3 seconds. At this range, 1,000 things could go wrong. And with primitive technology, the Vraxians believed they would. Karvesh's weapon hummed with computational power. His AI ran simulations, played out scenarios, calculated probabilities. It took 5 full seconds to generate a firing solution, longer than the previous 2 targets combined. The system flagged 17 high-risk variables and compensated for each one. When Karvesh fired, every Vraxian watched with bated breath. The dart flew true and struck 3 centimeters off center. Still well within the target's kill zone, but not perfect. 9.8 points. Acceptable, Karvesh said, though his mandibles clicked nervously. At this distance, perfection is impossible. Even my systems have limitations. Maya said nothing. She was barely aware of the crowds watching, barely conscious of anything except the target and the invisible line connecting her to it. She thought about her grandfather who'd taught her to shoot before she could read. She thought about the Marine instructors who'd refined her raw talent into lethal skill. She thought about the countless hours spent understanding, not just how to shoot, but why bullets flew the way they did. A gust of wind kicked up dust to her right. Perfect. She'd been waiting for that. Her breathing slowed until it nearly stopped. Her heart rate dropped to 40 beats per minute. In the space between thoughts and the silence between heartbeats, she found the shot, not with mathematics or algorithms, but with something deeper, the accumulated wisdom of 1,000 generations of hunters, warriors, and survivors who'd learned to throw stones with deadly accuracy before computers were even imagined. The shot felt right. That was the only way to describe it. Not correct, not calculated, but right in a way that transcended measurement. Maya saw the energy signature building in orbit. Every human sniper saw it. Their handheld instruments, primitive by galactic standards, could still detect a massive power spike. Command, this is Chen. They're preparing orbital bombardment. Acknowledged, came Colonel Rodriguez's voice. Can you do anything about it? Maya looked up at the sky, at the Vraxian command ship hanging in orbit like a metal moon, 400 kilometers straight up, through atmosphere, against a target that was moving, with a rifle that was designed for planetary surface engagement. Stand by, she said. She pulled out her personal datapad, not for targeting, but for information. She called up atmospheric data, orbital mechanics calculations, and the ship's known position from the colony's observatory. Then she put the datapad away and closed her eyes. This shot wasn't about mathematics. It was about faith. Faith in her training, in her instincts, in the accumulated wisdom of every human who'd ever looked at an impossible target and decided to try anyway. Maya, what are you doing? Webb asked, watching through his spotting scope. That's not a shot. That's suicide. Remember when I told you everything's impossible until someone does it? She was already calculating angles that made no sense, factoring variables that didn't exist in any manual. Watch and learn. She repositioned to a location she'd scouted weeks ago, a spot where the planet's magnetic field created unusual atmospheric effects, where convection currents from underground thermal vents created an updraft, where the angle to orbit was precisely perpendicular to the planet's rotation. Her rifle was loaded with a special round, depleted uranium core, armor-piercing design, modified sabot. It was designed to penetrate heavy vehicle armor, not spacecraft shielding, but it was all she had. The Vraxian command ship's main cannon reached 80% charge, 40 seconds until fire. Maya's breathing slowed to nothing. Her heart beat once every 3 seconds. She entered a state of consciousness that monks spent lifetimes trying to achieve, and warriors found only in moments of absolute necessity. The line between her and the target wasn't a mathematical trajectory. It was a connection, a certainty, a truth waiting to be made manifest. She didn't aim at the ship. She aimed at where the ship would be in the 3 minutes it would take her bullet to reach orbital altitude. She didn't compensate for atmospheric distortion. She used it, bending her trajectory through the thermal layers like light through a prism. She didn't fight gravity. She embraced it, using the planet's pull to curve her shot in ways that orbital mechanics said were impossible. The trigger pull was a prayer. The recoil was acceptance. The moment of release was transcendence. The bullet flew upward, seeming to accelerate as it climbed, feeding off atmospheric energies in ways that shouldn't have been physically possible, but somehow were. It pierced the troposphere, the stratosphere, the mesosphere. It entered the thermosphere still intact, still on target, still carrying the impossible certainty of its shooter's will. In the command ship, a junior officer noticed something on his sensors. Sir, we're detecting an incoming projectile. It appears to be... He paused, rechecking his readings. Sir, it appears to be a bullet. From the surface. That's absurd, Zekthar said. Nothing can reach us at this. The bullet, traveling at speeds it should never have achieved, struck the command ship's main cannon at the exact moment it reached 100% charge. The impact was microscopic. The effect was catastrophic. The charged weapons containment field destabilized. Energy meant to devastate a continent backfed into the ship's power systems. Explosions rippled through 3 decks. The main cannon shattered, venting atmosphere and debris into space. The command ship lurched, alarm screaming, as emergency systems fought to contain the damage. The orbital bombardment was canceled not by human technology, but by a single bullet, fired from 400 kilometers away by a woman who'd learned to shoot before she could ride a bicycle. Zekthar stared at the damage reports in stunned silence. That's not possible. That violates every known principle of ballistics, orbital mechanics, and basic physics. Karvesh's voice came over his comm, quiet and certain. No, Commander. It violates every principle we know. The humans clearly know something we've forgotten. On the ground, Maya's shot was met with stunned silence from both sides. Then Webb started laughing, a slightly hysterical sound that spoke to the absurdity of what they'd just witnessed. 400 kilometers. You shot a spaceship from the ground. That's not sniping, that's artillery. That's impossible. You keep using that word, Maya said, ejecting the spent casing and watching it tumble to the ground. I don't think it means what you think it means. The Vraxian assault faltered, then broke. Soldiers who'd watched their command ship nearly destroyed by what should have been an impossible shot decided that discretion was the better part of survival. They retreated in disorder, their technological superiority meaningless against an enemy that didn't follow the rules technology understood. As the dust settled over the battlefield, Zekthar found himself in the humiliating position of requesting a ceasefire. Not because his forces were destroyed, he still had superior numbers and firepower, but because his soldiers refused to fight an enemy they couldn't understand. The peace negotiations happened quickly. The Galactic Coalition agreed to recognize human sovereignty over Kepler 442b and 7 other contested systems. More importantly, they agreed to study human combat doctrines, particularly the concept of the human factor, that indefinable quality that made a species dangerous beyond what their technology suggested. Maya attended the signing ceremony, still carrying her grandfather's rifle. Zekthar approached her, his mandibles clicking in what she'd learned was resignation mixed with respect. "I don't understand how you did it," he admitted. "Our simulations, our physics models, our computational analyses, none of it explains your capabilities." "That's because you're looking for the wrong answer," Maya replied. "You want a formula, an equation, something you can plug into a computer. But what makes us dangerous isn't something you can calculate. It's the opposite. It's our ability to succeed despite the calculations saying we shouldn't." "Then teach us," Karavesh said, joining them. "Teach us this irrational perfection you possess." Maya considered this. "I can try. But understand it's not about the technology. It's about the connection between shooter and shot, between warrior and weapon, between intention and outcome. It takes years to develop, decades to master, and a lifetime to perfect. And even then, you're never really done learning." Within months, the Galactic Coalition established the Human Marksmanship Academy, where species from across the galaxy came to learn from human instructors. They learned about breathing control, heartbeat regulation, instinctive understanding of ballistics. They learned that sometimes the best computer was the organic one between your ears. But more than that, they learned why humanity was dangerous. Not because humans were stronger or faster or more advanced, but because humans could take a tool, any tool, no matter how primitive, and master it so completely that the tool became an extension of their will. Maya eventually retired from active service, but she continued teaching. On clear nights, she'd take her students to the range and have them shoot at the stars. Not because they could hit them, but because the attempt taught them to reach beyond their limitations. "Remember," she'd tell each new class, "we're not trying to be perfect. Perfect is for machines. We're trying to be human, adaptable, intuitive, creative, and dangerous precisely because we don't always follow the rules. When you pull that trigger, you're not just sending a bullet downrange. You're making a statement about what it means to be alive, to choose, to will something into existence against all odds." And somewhere in the galaxy, on worlds that had once mocked human primitiveness, soldiers trained with weapons that had no computers, no AI, no technological assistance. They trained until their hands bled and their muscles screamed, until the weapon became part of them and they became part of the weapon. They trained until they understood what Maya had known all along. The most dangerous weapon in the universe wasn't plasma or railguns or quantum disruptors. It was a human who'd decided to take the shot. The end author's note. The Precision Protocol has become required reading at the Galactic Coalition War College, where it serves as a case study in asymmetric warfare and the dangers of technological overconfidence. Sergeant Maya Chen's shot, officially designated the Kepler incident, remains the longest confirmed small arms hit in galactic history. When asked how she made the impossible shot, she replied, "I didn't. I just decided I would, and then I did. That's the human way." The bullet flew for 3.4 seconds. In that time, it crossed 3,500 meters, dropped nearly 8 meters due to gravity, drifted through 3 different wind currents, and adjusted its trajectory in ways that would make physicists weep. It struck the target exactly in the center, the impact point marked by a perfect circular hole. 10.0. The silence that followed was absolute. Every Vraxian, every human, every observer from the dozen species monitoring the duel simply stared at the target, at the impossible proof of something they couldn't explain. "How?" Karavesh's voice came out as a whisper, stripped of arrogance. My AI calculated that shot as having a success probability of less than 2%. You have no computer assistance, no predictive modeling, no— I have something better, Maya interrupted, standing and slinging her rifle. I have understanding. Your AI calculated what should happen based on measured variables. I understood what would happen based on felt truth. There's a difference. That's irrational.
Warfare is mathematics.
Ballistics is physics. You can't just feel your way to— Sure I can. Maya walked toward him and several Vraxian guards tensed, but she simply extended her hand in the human gesture of respect. You want to know the real secret? It's not about the rifle. It's not about the bullet. It's about becoming one with the shot. We don't calculate the trajectory. We become the trajectory. Karvesh stared at the offered hand, then at his weapon with its gleaming sensors and quantum processors. You're saying your primitive, emotional, illogical approach is superior to pure computational. I'm saying I won, Maya said simply. And I did it with a rifle my grandfather built by hand in his garage. Before Karvesh could respond, alarms screamed across the valley. Zekthar's voice boomed over the communication channels. All units, combat positions. The duel is over. If we cannot defeat them with honor, we will crush them with force. Full assault, all fronts. Show these primitives the power of true civilization. Maya's expression hardened. I guess we're done talking then. Wait, Karvesh called as she turned to leave. You said you become the shot. What does that mean? She looked back at him, and in her eyes he saw something that chilled his warrior's heart. Not anger or hatred, but a calm certainty that was somehow worse. It means when you rely on technology, you're limited by what your machines can predict. When we rely on ourselves, we're limited only by what we can imagine, and humans, friend, have very impressive imaginations. As Maya ran back to her lines and Karvesh stood alone in the valley, the Vraxian champion realized something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He had just watched a human do the impossible not in spite of her primitive tools, but because of them. She hadn't transcended her limitations. She'd embraced them, used them, transformed them into strengths his advanced civilization had forgotten how to recognize. Above them, Vraxian dropships screamed across the sky, carrying thousands of soldiers to what they believed would be an easy victory. Below, human snipers took their positions, each one carrying weapons that would have been obsolete on 100 worlds, each one possessing a skill that no computer could replicate. The real battle was about to begin, and the Vraxians were about to learn that sometimes evolution moved backward for a very good reason. The snipers' war, the Vraxian assault came like a storm of metal and fury. Dropships screamed through Kepler 442b's atmosphere, disgorging hundreds of soldiers onto every approach to the human colony. Ground vehicles rumbled across the rocky terrain, their weapons tracking for targets. Overhead, gunships circled like mechanical vultures, their sensors sweeping for defensive positions. It was, by any conventional measure, overwhelming force. The kind of assault that had broken 47 worlds. It would have worked too, if humanity fought conventionally. Protocol Longshot is active. Maya's voice came through on the command channel, calm despite the chaos. All sniper teams, weapons free. Remember your training. Remember who you are. Across the defensive perimeter, 24 human snipers settled into positions that had taken them weeks to prepare. Each position was chosen not for cover or convenience, but for angles. Precise lines of sight that created overlapping fields of fire impossible for scanners to predict. The Vraxians thought in terms of optimal firing solutions and maximum effective ranges. Humans thought in terms of art and murder. The first Vraxian unit to breach the canyon made it approximately 40 meters before their commanding officer's head snapped back. A perfectly placed shot removing him from the equation. The soldiers scattered, their shields activating, their sensors desperately trying to locate the source of fire. They were looking in the wrong place. Corporal Sarah Martinez took her shot from 2,100 meters away, through a gap in the rock formations that existed for only 3 seconds as her target moved. The bullet found the weak point in a squad leader's armor just as he turned to issue orders. He dropped and his squad froze, suddenly leaderless. Private First Class James Chen, no relation to Maya, fired from an elevated position that shouldn't have had line of sight to the target at all. But he'd calculated the ricochet angle off a crystalline formation, and his bullet caromed perfectly into an enemy sniper's position, eliminating the threat before it could locate human positions. This wasn't random shooting. This was orchestrated death. In his command ship orbiting above the battlefield, Zekthar watched his tactical display with growing horror. Red markers appeared and disappeared across the map, each one representing a squad leader, a vehicle commander, a communications specialist. The humans weren't targeting random soldiers. They were surgically removing his command and control structure. Counter-battery fire, he roared. Use the gunships. Triangulate their positions and eliminate them. The gunships complied, their sophisticated targeting systems detecting muzzle flashes and calculating shooter positions within microseconds. Plasma cannons lit up the canyon walls, turning a rock to molten glass. But by the time the plasma arrived, the human snipers had already moved. They're not staying in position, Velcro reported, her voice tight with frustration. They fire, displace, and relocate before our countermeasures can engage. It's like fighting ghosts. They're not ghosts, they're humans. Zekthar slammed his appendage against his command console. Flesh and blood limited by organic reaction times. Our system should be able to, his tactical officer interrupted. Commander, we've lost all forward observers in sectors 3 through 7. The enemy is eliminating our reconnaissance elements faster than we can deploy them. Maya smiled grimly as she chambered another round. She'd relocated to her 4th position in as many minutes, a grueling climb that left her muscles burning but kept her alive. Through her scope, she tracked a Vraxian communications vehicle attempting to coordinate the assault. 2,800 meters. Strong crosswind. The vehicle's armor was thick, but armor always had weaknesses. She found it. The sensor array mounting point where the armor was thinner to allow the sensors to function. One shot through that gap would penetrate into the vehicle's interior, likely hitting critical systems or crew. Breath control. Heartbeat regulation. Wind reading. Gravity compensation, instinct. The shot rang out, and 3 seconds later, the communications vehicle went dark, its crew scrambling to evacuate as internal systems failed. All units, this is Sergeant Chen. Maya spoke into her comm. Begin Phase 2. Make them afraid of the spaces between. What followed was psychological warfare elevated to an art form. The human snipers didn't just kill, they terrified. A Vraxian soldier would watch his comrade's shield fail from a shot that came from nowhere. Another would see his weapon destroyed in his hands from a distance that shouldn't have been possible. Officers died precisely when they tried to rally their troops. Vehicles exploded exactly when they grouped together. The Vraxians began to understand that there was nowhere safe. Their shields meant nothing. Their armor provided false comfort. Their superior technology was being systematically dismantled by opponents they couldn't even see. Fear spread through their ranks like a virus. This is impossible. A Vraxian sergeant screamed over the command channel. They're hitting us from beyond our sensor's maximum range. How are they even seeing us? The answer was simple and terrifying. The humans weren't relying on sensors. They were using their eyes, their experience, their understanding of how prey moved and hid. They were hunting the way humans had hunted for hundreds of thousands of years, before technology existed to do the work for them. Zekthar made his decision. Orbital bombardment. Coordinates uploading now. If we cannot defeat them conventionally, we'll sterilize the entire canyon. Sir, Velcro protested, that violates the Galactic Convention on, I don't care. These humans are making a mockery of everything we know about warfare. They're breaking every rule, fighting in ways that shouldn't be possible. We end this now. The command ship's main cannon began charging, building power for a strike that would turn the battlefield into a crater. It would take 60 seconds to reach full charge, but once fired, nothing in the target zone would survive.